Welcome, guys, to
How you guys doing? Good?
podcast. We have George here. I'm here. Um, Sam won't be here today, but he will be next week. But we'll push on. We have a lot to discuss. I can't even be bothered with the intro. I just wanna, just get into it. So,
Just get into it,
um,
man. Just get into it.
yeah, George, how you doing?
I'm all right. There's a lot of catharsis I think that we need to do. There's a lot of thinking about where we are. Um, I think, you know what, the first thing that I did want to bring up is probably managing expectations, because I think it's very key when you're trying to discuss the context of the season. We need to be able to understand where we were at the start, where we've come to, and why we haven't achieved those objectives. And because I think right now I'm seeing a lot of different perspectives for sure, but I still think that there's been a lack of nuance or context about how we actually see our squad, and I don't want that to be lost. So I think when you're discussing the Arteta thing, when you're discussing our season objectives, you need to be able to understand where the weaknesses in their squad are, how far you felt that those weaknesses could be fixed, and then discuss whether or not you think those are glaring changes that cannot be achieved with the current manager.
I think another thing we have lost is Arsenal fans have lost this perspective of context. I understand that they're going through pain recently, but what I've been seeing from Twitter is like they've attacked one side, but they haven't like gone into full details, seen both sides of the story before coming to a final conclusion. Which you've seen on Twitter. It seems very reactionary to me personally, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So
I couldn't agree more. And you know what? I want to state off the start because I feel like being an optimistic fan, you have to do these things to preface. But look, he made huge mistakes, and I do not want to get away from that. Like, I think we've been on the podcast discussing the lineups, and I was very surprised. Of course, I'm always open-minded to see, but I don't want it to detract that the structure that he did in this tie was horrific. It was horrible. It wasn't the way I would have set us up to go. I think it was the wrong tactic. I do think he let the occasion get the best of him. So I want to preface the conversation by saying he's not perfect, and that even though I'm a huge supporter of his talent and what I think he could be as a coach, let's not detract that, of course, he's made mistakes that have cost us progressing in Europe. I think that's important to state. I do. Um, but we'll get into like the future project. But I think it's important that this tie, especially, I felt he set up in the first game horrifically wrong, and I don't think that he learned his lesson in the second game. To be honest with you,
I was talking to a friend of mine. You know him from HS Grimes on Twitter. He's a very good friend of mine, and I was speaking to him, and he said Pep, he did exactly what he got frustrated at Pep for. He overthought the game. He done it twice over two legs. Pep did it for I think he did it when he played against Monaco. He did it when he played against the year after he played against Tottenham. He did it again the year after when he played against Lyon. He constantly overthinks the game. He's
doing it today. If you saw the lineups today against Chelsea, he's doing it again today.
He over Arteta. I just feel like he overthought the game and the occasion got the best of him, which I kind of understand because he's young. He's young in his Prince's first job. He will make mistakes. But boy, I'm telling you, that was a wrong game to be overthinking the way he did. He overthought the game. It was very similar to how Pep overthought against Lyon.
Yeah, you know what, mate, like I use this sentence quite a bit where I say he is a phenomenal coach, but he is a poor manager. And I've seen him in humility try to change his ways many times, and it's why I really like him. Like I don't think that he's without fault, but I think he's shown an ability to change and adapt. So the one thing I wanted to bring with context with everybody is let's go back to when he was appointed. So Our team used to get tired for pressing for 30 minutes, if everybody would remember. It was very clear when Arteta came in, he wanted a pressing philosophy, but we would get tired, waste away in games. And so what Arteta did is he shelved the pressing. Then we couldn't improve fitness levels due to the COVID and to that season. So we removed a preseason, so we couldn't go to the pressing philosophy. And because of our window and not securing Awar, we lacked a 10 or anybody into that presence in the zone 14. And as a result, we went wide and we crossed. So that was a huge problem, and teams figured us out. And then he changed it again. So he didn't trust our back line because they lacked the technical security. So what did he do? He got everyone to drop deep, offer a passing option. But what does that do? It doesn't give you any players ahead to pass to. And so your buildup becomes slow. And we saw that versus City versus Liverpool. Then he lost both fullbacks. So we then made a system, a 3-1-6, in order to negate the need for a fullback. But as we saw, there's a limit to that system. Again, I don't want to say that he hasn't made any errors, but I just want to provide context because I don't think people are looking at this progression over the last year and a half about where we've come and how to deal with the squad. So he has had huge errors in managing games, I think, mainly the substitutions. When he does see an issue in changing game state, he is late to react, but that again is a quality of a young manager. That happens. I don't think he's always made the same attacking balance with 2 runners and 2 creative players in every front line. But again, it's a young manager. So the squad is in major need of surgery. And I just want us to be realistic when we're talking about what we need going forward and criticizing where it's due. I see a lot of people saying, look, the squad shouldn't be 9th. I agree. It should be higher in the league. But the balance of this squad is 9th. We lacked a number 10 for over 6 months this season. Thomas Partey, a great addition, but let's be fair, because of injuries, we haven't had the one transitional threat that we had in our arsenal for over 6 months of the season. So how do you expect to sustain attacking patterns without a 6 that controls transitions and without a number 10 that is able to have technical security? It's impossible. So when you compare us to the likes of Leicester, Man United, Chelsea, regardless of quality, they have these profiles. So I get frustrated when we're doing a comparison. It's not a fair comparison for me. And this is why I felt I'll give him this season as a free pass. I want to see the summer. I hope we get the profiles. And then I'm going to be far more critical on where I see us going forward.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I just wanted to say stuff like fans that say our team is not 9th. I agree. Like I said, like George echoed the same point I'm about to make. The team may not be 9th, but the mentality and the balance is 9th. You know, it's not just about quality. It's about, to be successful in the Premier League, you don't just have to have quality. You have to have more than that. You have to have consistency. You have to have mentality. You have to have the right strength and depth in case injuries happen. Anything can happen because the Premier League quality has gone up. It's not just about quality anymore. There's many more things. And people say, yes, you've got the quality of 9, but have we got all the other bases that makes a team enter the top 4? Because right now I feel like we're a mid-table side. No offense.
No, but you know what, mate? It isn't even no offense. It's actually the truth. And you know what? I think that's why I talked about managing expectations at the beginning of the season, because I felt part of this anger and this backlash is people having unfair expectations of the squad at the beginning of the season. So if you felt that we had a squad capable of top 4, then of course you're going to be devastated that we didn't, and you're going to blame the manager for not meeting those expectations. But I, for one, never felt that we had the squad to do those things. Yeah, I relate it really quickly to an analogy. It's like you can't bring a Honda Civic to Formula One and expect to compete and win. That doesn't make sense. And so you can have the best driver in the world, but that's still a Honda Civic. It's not winning Formula One. It's not competing in Formula One. It doesn't have the engine. And so you can have the best mechanics in the world, but at the end of the day, it lacks the power. It lacks your ability to compete in that sport. So you have to buy a new car. You got to upgrade the position in order to compete. And then it becomes a difference of, is the driver good enough? We can compare it to different sports, but like the fundamental thing is the same. If I give a carpenter, only one hammer and expect him to build a house, that's ridiculous. So give him the tools, give him the manpower. If he fails, I'm with people and saying, listen, we've tried this. But I fundamentally think that this squad is built for pragmatism. I do not think that it's built to be expansive, and we have to wait for that to happen. Once you
It
have the
still
tools,
has.
and if he then shows, hey, I'm not going to be expansive with the tools, I'm with you. I will critique it.
I feel like this team is still built in Emery's mold.
Of course.
It's still built because Emery was a very pragmatic manager. It's built in Emery's mold. And because of us trying to add players on top of that, it's like unbalanced it.
Mm-hmm.
For there to be structure, you need to balance the structure. It's like this.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to remove that element of pragmatism in the game and of our team, because that's not the style we are going towards. That's not the style Arteta wants. Arteta wants control, discipline, he wants control over midfield. It's obvious.
Positional play. He's very specific about structured, off the ball and on the ball plans. If you don't have that, it will fail. Now, I think there is one argument that maybe what we can do is we can talk about. Listen, he's not adaptable. He's too stubborn to change. And listen, I think that's a fair criticism, because at the end of the day, part of being a manager is being humble enough to change. But the only pushback that I would make is, if he had the tools to do so, I think that criticism would be a little bit more valid. And I think that you would be looking towards critiquing the manager with a little bit more of a fine light if you could. Maybe I'll just go in the meantime to some of the comments about what do I think of Bissouma and whether or not he's Bissouma or Burge. I'm sure we'll get into some of these transfer plans a little bit later, but I don't know. Daniel, what do you think about on Arteta? Do you think that we've covered enough?
No, not yet. Anyway.
Yeah. I you know what, mate? I think, look, at the end of the day, there's reasons why I can understand both sides. But it really comes down to me understanding whether or not you have the tools. And if you don't have the tools, I don't feel it's right to essentially blame the manager as being the sole reason for why this squad is where it is. So I think you have to take context and nuance into the argument. And beyond that, if you're telling me, let's play maybe devil's advocate in a sense. Do people believe that the lack of a 10 or lack of Partey and squad depth was a good enough reason to not compete with these teams? Because then I would argue, if you did and you felt that our squad was good enough, then why has the squad failed 3 managers? The idea of this U-shaped passing that we come to hate, it's been the same case in 3 different managers. And I'm sorry, but between Wenger and Arteta, at their heart, they are not pragmatic at heart. This is a mentality thing. And when you see a player turn back and play the safe option, I can tell you from having played the game, they are hiding. This is classic, not bravery to play between the lines. When we talk about intent and playing forward, every coach wants you to do that. It doesn't matter if you're pragmatic. Even if you're Emery, he wants you to play forward. Playing back does poorly in terms of how we're going to progress. Even if you're a pragmatic manager, they do not want that. So there's a couple of unwritten rules. Just, you don't play it back. You don't play it into the zone that you've received it. And we don't cross in the middle of the pitch unless you're sure of your option. These are very basic fundamentals of football, guys. So when I see the players doing that, I know they're hiding. They're afraid. They don't want to be caught out. Leno kicking it long after having months of kicking it short. This is going away from the philosophy because he's scared of making a mistake. So,
and that's what I always keep saying. Kevin Campbell echoes it every time. You can coach these players 100 million things in their head, but once they cross the white line, it is up to them to follow the game plan,
Mm-hmm.
and have the mentality to kill the team. They don't have the mentality to kill the team. They've lost that. The players are they've lost the mentality to be decisive in key moments. They're the most indecisive. I watch them sometimes, and they genuinely look like they don't know. They're just like, it's like Dumb and Dumber next to each other. It's like Dumb and Dumber. They don't know what they're doing. They just
People think that Arteta screaming constant instructions is a critique on him as a coach. No, he does that because he doesn't trust the players to play. He does that because he doesn't trust them to execute. And so he feels that he needs to constantly go and talk to them, talk them through really the game plan and talk them through the phases of play. It's really quite ridiculous. I think I'll bring up one quote that I'm sure everybody has heard a million times with Thierry Henry back a couple of years ago with Monday Night Football. When Pep, and so, when you talk about elite coaches, I think, Pep always comes in the conversation. But even Pep has said, what is my job? My job is to build you a structure, to build you a plan that gets you up to the final third. Once you are in the final third, it is up to you to complete the actions. And when we're looking at Arteta, let's look throughout the season and try to make it fair. So after January is probably the time when we had a creative 10 presence. Probably after the time when we had Thomas Partey. When you start analyzing our games, it's no wonder that our form picked up with the idea of a technical security and with Partey back into the lineup. You then look at our underlying statistics. With those key cogs, you have if you're a stats man, your XG, your chances. We consistently started to make chances of greater than 2 in our last 6 games. And it fundamentally came down to the players executing and performing those actions and getting the output. So again, Arteta has built us a structure, has built us a philosophy and a phase of play to get us to the final third. Us not completing the action requires the players to do it. I think you're on mute, mate. Hold on.
Yeah, it's been our Achilles heel. You watch, even when we didn't have a number 10, you watch certain games of us. That's why fans get frustrated. When Arteta says, if we took our chances, it would be a much different game. In some parts, yes, that annoys me. But to be fair, he does have a point. You said it before. You can coach a team to the final third, but it's up to them to finish the action. The amount of chances we've missed, compounded by the mistakes we make. The amount of mistakes we make leading to a goal is ridiculous. But yet, probably, if I check the chances created, probably be one of the highest in the league since January. We've probably been one of the highest. We are just
we are. Factually, I just want to back you up on your point there. Factually, we're top 4 in the league on chances created. So if you're going to slam the philosophy that he's not doing it right, then you're going to have to make a better argument for me that his structure doesn't provide chances because it does. That's simply true. And completing our actions, it's compounded by our injuries. Mate, when you remove David Luiz, everybody hammered me for saying David Luiz was our most important player. The reason I said that is because he was our most important build-up progressor. He is the leader in the back. When you remove that man from the back line, we are unable to progress. You see the backward passing. You then have Granit Xhaka, who, no matter what I feel on his limits and his ceiling as a player, he is a technical leader in the midfield. So you remove him from the midfield, you've now lost 2 phases of key technical leaders. How do you expect to progress the ball? We've seen that, we can't do it. So again, when you remove those things and you take things into context between the injuries, the structure, and what he provides as a manager, I am still of the opinion that he is the right guy. That doesn't mean that he hasn't made mistakes, and that doesn't mean that he hasn't cost us at times this season. But fundamentally, if I were to make a tally on the pros and the cons, he has saved us far more than he has impeded us. And I fundamentally believe that.
People talk about bringing Allegri, bringing all these other managers. Fine, there'll be a bounce for the next 6 months, and then Arsenal will go crazy saying, oh my days, you're finally going to win a title. Then after 6 months, they'll be like, oh, we want him out. There needs to be a structure in place,
But mate,
Um,
you know what it kills me about the Allegri shout? Sorry to jump in, but there is zero forward planning. Maximiliano Allegri. We have one of the best U23 cores in world football. Let's have that right. Allegri doesn't play youth. You want expansive football, but you want Allegri. This doesn't make sense. This is why I'm sitting there saying, what is the criteria for your manager? Let's agree on those things, and then let's move forward. Because an Allegri is a 3-5-2, which, by the way, has shown in history to never be consistent to play at the top.
it's not sustainable playing a
It is not.
3-5-2, especially in the Premier League, because
Mhm.
teams would just set up to counter that. It's 3-5-2 is the most unsustainable formation. I don't like Arteta played it. Remember, Arteta tried playing it to our FA Cup run, and it didn't
And I
even
told
last
you
that
why,
long.
right? It's the easiest system as a coach to do, because the zones on the pitch are very easy to set up. But the problem is there's a lot of space in behind. And so while it's very easy to set up in and the structure, it's why Thomas Tuchel did it. If you noticed, every big manager that has come into the Premier League has started with three at the back. And they always switch away from it because it's unsustainable. It can win you a trophy in the short term. It can win you something in the short term. But in terms of a long-term plan, it will always be found out because of the spaces in behind.
It's too easy to counteract, and you could clearly see that when we played Villa, they tore us to shreds. Because what did we do? We tried going with the 3-5-2, and it massively backfired on us. We got torn apart, and that's why I mean that playing the 3-5-2 may be easy, but it's not sustainable. We took Simon is. I think I said Simon will not be here today, but we'll be back very soon. And yes, we have transfer news, and we'll get into, since this guy's asked for transfer news, we'll get into it. I know there's one player very upset about, and that's Samare. It felt like
living, mate.
No offense, George. Felt like you had a little crush on him,
Massively. Well, you know what? We should probably get into it because even some of the questions have talked about Basuma. So, let's talk about why these profiles are, why I prefer Sumare, but maybe in our setup. So,
wait, just one question, George. Just one question, George. Out of all the summer targets you talked about in the group chat, even we talked about Awa. Was Samari say if you're the manager of Arsenal, would Samari be the first person you immediately go for? Just want to see how much you rate him highly. I want to gauge. He's the first person you'd go for.
He was the absolute first person I would go for in the entire summer.
Okay, so the transfer window's open. The first target you'd go for is Samari.
Samari, right away. And the reason I do it is because I haven't seen a player on the market that has his level of completeness as a 6. So when I look at it, I look at positions and I look at their ceilings and I look, okay, how likely is it that we're going to see another one like him? So if I were to go to a winger, let's say, how likely do I think the world will produce an excellent winger? Very easily. Every year we do it. How often do I think we will produce a creative presence in the world? Very easily. We always do it. We seem to prefer attacking football and attacking players. What I see in Samare is somebody who on the ball and off the ball will probably redefine how we view a 6 in the position. He's so athletic and so competent off the ball that I don't think I've seen somebody as complete in a while. He's very raw. Don't get me wrong. He's very raw in how he conducts his football, but his traits, I haven't seen the level of completeness in a player, and I don't see one in world football that's close. So let's talk about Basuma. Let's compare the two because look, those are the most talked about targets. Look, I love Samari. Let's talk Basuma. They're both 6s, okay, or 8s in roles because they both can play as an 8. But primarily in how we look at Thomas Partey, they'll be used as a 6 or a sitter. And Basuma is excellent on the ball, phenomenal. And I think the slight difference between the two is Basuma probably has a little bit more shooting ability, I think, right now than Samari. But Samari is a better dribbler. So it's a catch-22. I think they're both excellent on the ball, and you're not losing something by recruiting Basuma on the ball. That shouldn't
Don't you
be the
think
argument.
Basuma is a good ball carrier and can release the ball quickly? But the thing is,
And
you can say the same thing about Samari. I've watched a lot of Samari. He's
mate,
very quick.
he is the exact so on the ball again, and this is what I talk about. On the ball, there isn't a difference. So don't get me wrong. If we were to get Basuma, I think we'll have amazing progression. We'll see a great football. This is not that he's crap, but the key is off the ball. So now Basuma, if you look even at our last performance with us, in ESR, he gave him the runaround, and it's because he's not an off the ball player. He struggles two ways. Basuma is an elite athlete. This is the key indicator. So when you talk about recruiting players that are great athletes, Sumare is positionally excellent. He rarely gets caught out. He knows how to sit, and he doesn't lose the ball. In addition, he has the progression that we would want. So in my view, he was the perfect 6 to limit us. Now, listen, I think when you look at Basuma, it won't be as big of an issue because we're going to be a much more halfway defending team, right? We're going to be dominant again. So this is how big teams play. The reason is I preferred Sumare because on the off chance that we do get countered, if I'm asking, do I prefer Sumare or Basuma running back to goal on a one-on-one, it's Sumare all day. He's going to win that race 9 times out of 10. Basuma, I can't say the same.
You're saying Basuma. The reason why Emma Smith Rowe was so ahead of him is because Basuma can't really. He prefers to scan the pitch first.
He is a behind the ball player.
Him. And that's why Emma Smith Rowe was able to target Basuma and gave him a runaround because that's what Emma Smith Rowe specialized behind in running, creating in that tight space, running in behind, which Basuma cannot. Well, it's not like cannot. He might develop and be better at that.
I don't think so because he's 26. We know the limits athletically, and this has been my point. And so again, I don't think it'll be as much of an issue because we're going to have Saliba and Gabriel in the back, so it's not like we can't have runners and that we're always vulnerable. But with Sumare, just factually, I'm protecting my bases. This is essentially what I'm doing. I'm limiting our weaknesses. I can promise you that Basuma will be targeted in transition. That's what we'll look at. They won't target Partey because you can't win a race with him. I think you can with Basuma. That's basically where I'm at with it. And I think price-wise, they're gonna be the same, if not cheaper, for Sumare.
Sumare is cheaper.
For sure.
And Samara has a higher resale value than
as a deal. You can't. And look, I'm trying to be objective here, but everyone knows I'm the optimistic fan. But I can't, in knowing and willing, and being objective, I can't say that this isn't a mistake. I think this, and it's not to say that we can never get him. And this is horrible because Basuma will help us significantly. I do want to make that kind of clear. It's not that Basuma's crap. He's gonna excel us. He's gonna raise us some levels. He is. So let's get that clear. But of the two, if I had my choice, George, you have an open transfer budget. Who is the first player that you're going for? It's Boubakary Sumare every day of the week because I don't see a player on the market that can do what he can do to the same level. Somebody can be good at it, but to the same level, I don't see. And so it marries the best of both.
His ceiling is so much higher than Basuma is. So it's harder. It's hard. And the fact what makes it more simpler is the deal is cheaper.
The deal is cheaper, mate. It blends the both worlds. Look, honestly, mate, like this is what kills me about it. You can have reasons for wanting Basuma, which should be on the ball. I hope people understand that he is phenomenal on the ball. Okay? And I get that.
I've got something for you, George. I've got something for you, George. Samare. I was like you a few hours ago, upset that he's going to Leicester, which I think which is done. It looks like it's done. I was told something. I was told Arsenal, although very interested in Samare, they've rated Samare with Partey. There was even talk they wanted it was even a talk between Partey and Samari, but they went for Partey because he's more experienced, he's older. But there was talk from many people that I've spoken to that Arsenal were a bit worried just because of the history of them buying players from Lille and not working out.
Again, I think that's poor because you recruit to a profile, and when you recruit to a profile, you rarely make mistakes. Again, I can understand the hesitation, but we need to look at the role that Samari or Basuma would play. Okay, and you need to weigh the pros and cons about how do you attack. Let's put it this way: I look at it in a pessimistic view. So I look at who would I rather want if I'm in trouble, not when I'm doing well, but when I'm in trouble, right? Who would I want to fix that? And for me, it's Sumare head and shoulders above. If I'm in trouble and the structure's gone into our team, we're running back to goal, we're being transitioned on in a counter. Who do you feel more comfortable? I'll pose it back to you. You have Richarlison on the run right now, or Zaha. He's clear on goal. Who do you feel stops him more, Samare or Basuma?
I'll tell
Honestly.
you, it's Samare by far. I'll tell you why. As we talked about, Basuma's not good in behind runner. So if you get behind Basuma,
it's done.
I can't guarantee he will catch up to you or make it hard. He'll get there enough to put the person off. With Samare, he's so athletically gifted.
Now let me ask you another question. Liverpool press, you're in the first phase, right? Do you think Sumare and Basuma have the same level to get out of those presses? I would. I think they're similar. I think I'll be fair. I think Basuma can get out of that press. I think Sumare can get out of that press. But the one thing I want to ask you is who do you think's carrying it the length of the field? Basuma or Sumare?
I think both can do it, actually. They can both
Probably both can do it. So on the ball, I do this on purpose. On the ball, let's not kid ourselves. We're getting a very similar player. I want to be fair, right? If we do, by the way, get Basuma, I know that he's the main target. We'll probably get into that a little later. But between the two, we're getting the same level of ability on the ball. I want to make that clear. But it's off the ball, mate. It's that question. Zaha, Richarlison, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Should we go on into the big one? When Watford come up, Ismail Assar, who I don't know if people remember, but he's gonna be a threat when he comes up. These big wingers. Son, if you have Son through on goal, who's catching up to Son? Basuma or Samari? And again, this is what I look at. I'm a pragmatist at heart. I think people find struggle when I start suggesting all these attacking players, but as a coach, I'm very pragmatic. I like central compactness, and I want to be sure that I control the transitions. That's why I wanted Samari, in addition to the feasibility. He's cheaper.
Samari limits your weakness.
Yeah, and mate, I don't know if people have thought about this, but I'm just going to name some players, and you tell me what they all have in common. Thomas Partey, Mohamed El Neni, Yves Bissouma, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. What do they all have in common? AFCON.
Yeah,
they're
AFCON,
gone.
Yeah.
Yep. So
once they go in January, we are absolutely screwed.
So what's going to happen when you remove 4 pillars in the starting lineup? Because Thomas Partey, Basuma, by the way, is a pillar. Let's be honest. Mohamed El Neni, I love the guy, but we can forget him. But add Oba. So you've got 3 pillars in the midfield and at striker competing in. How are you going to compete in January, almost biggest time of the season, right? So when I'm looking at the deal, Sumare is cheaper. I think I'm getting the better player, but let's say I'm wrong. Let's say I'm wrong. He's cheaper. I'm getting him for more of the season. Do I have more resale value? Yes. If he doesn't work like you say, and other people say, not you, sorry, but other people say that foreign players may not adapt. Can I resale Boubakary Sumare? Yes. Can I sell him for the same price, if not double? Yes, the lad is 22. Yves Bissouma is 26.
Yo, George, don't make me feel like we've just made an absolute Virgil van Dijk mistake here.
Mate, I'm telling you, look, I've watched the player. I think we've made a Virgil van Dijk level mistake. I really do. But at the end of the day, I just want to say, look, Basuma makes sense. If we're doing now, I just want to address the comment by Josefa, Basuma or Burge. Basuma by far. Let's not kind of beat around the bush here. Basuma, in terms of what we're looking for the role, as a plan B, yes, he is the one to pick over Burge because Burge right now. What I worry about him, he had a really bad injury. When you talk about a rupture of a hamstring tendon, just medically, it's very tough to return to play with the same explosivity. And Burge wasn't elite quickness too to begin with. So when I'm talking about seeing somebody that could come back from an injury like that, I get worried. And so athletically, he's got even worse of a concern than Basuma. Basuma is a better runner than Burge. But yeah, so Basuma is the plan B between the two if I had to choose. But mate, I can't objectively say that we've missed a trick with Samari. I think it's the wrong move. It's a mistake, and it's a move that we're going to regret. When are you going to have the time to get Boubakary Samari for £26 million? And I don't buy that Leicester have a better project. I've heard, Leicester may have a better project than ours. I don't buy that. You are Arsenal Football Club who love the French league. Let's go in terms of our global appeal, in terms of your recognition for your national teams. Getting and starting in Arsenal is far better than Leicester. You will get far more recognition there.
George, it's not that simple. Players want to compete in the Champions League, and the people I've spoken to are close to my camp is, of course, he'd love to join Arsenal. It's the bigger club, bigger reputation, bigger platform to show your performances. Mm-hmm. But the thing is that Leicester have that we don't. Is at least if they don't get Champions League football, some sort of European football like the Europa League. And by the way, they're way far in the Champions League race than we are. If we check the Premier League, let me see. Hold on.
I do this because you know what? I agree on a Champions League level. I'm with you on that theory, and I'd actually understand that. But I do want to talk about the table for a bit. So Leicester are on 63 points with a game in hand on West Ham right now. Chelsea, they're drawing right now, but let's say they lose to be pessimistic, and they're only 1 point of difference between Leicester. I just want to show you that their next couple of matches, they have Man United, Chelsea, and Tottenham. So Chelsea are their main competitors in that top four race. Man United are up there. They're very good. And, Tottenham, as much as I hate them, they're not an easy game. Those are very tough games. And if you lose those 2 out of those 3 games, they're not getting top 4.
West Ham could be out of it.
I mean, West Ham, factually, they're in it. As much as I hate it, they're in it. They win their game in hand. That puts them at 61 points. It's literally it's a couple points of difference.
West Ham have Everton, Brighton, West Brom, and Southampton.
Those are pretty decent. I'd expect them to win 3 of those.
Yeah, I see your point.
Mate, it is very, very close. Look, anything could happen. You know what I mean? Look, Leicester can definitely pull ahead, but look at their last performance against Newcastle. They were horrific. And mate, this isn't the first time Rodgers does this. Last year, he crashed out after being in the driving seat for top 4 once again. He's got 5, 8 ACL injuries in the last 2 years. That tells me he's a poor trainer.
What do you mean by he's a poor trainer?
So when I see ACL injuries, you kind of classify them into one or two ways. If there's 1 or 2 players in your squad that are getting ACL injuries, then that's probably a freak accident. But when I see legitimately 4 to 5 ACL injuries, it means that I haven't seen a good enough preseason and fitness to build the muscles in a strong way, because towards the end of the season, you rely much more on your instinct. And if you are getting injuries and a breakdown there, you haven't trained properly.
You could argue the same for Arsenal, though.
I don't think so, because we only had Hector Bellerin and Rob Holding. They've had 5.
Not just
Ricardo
ACL
Pereira,
injuries,
James
injuries.
Justin. Who else did they have? I remember 5 off the top of my head. Let me see.
We have muscle injuries such as like David Luiz, upper.
Muscle injuries are okay though, right, mate? Because they're short term. So these things, and by the way, like David Luiz, it was like a little meniscus procedure. And by the way, they did that so that he could play again this season. I promise you, like it could be conservative treatment. They didn't have to do that. That was fully saying, I want you to play this season, so we need to speed up your recovery. But he didn't have to. And Oba got an impeccable injury record over the years. So, yeah, if you look at, I'm going to try to find the news. Maybe in the meantime, you can have a look. But if you do look throughout his reign, he's got over 5 ACL injuries in the last 2 years.
Let's move on to the more...
Castagna, there's another one.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't Soyuncu have something with his thigh that ruled him out for months as well? So I think I think that's 4. I'd have to like really research it, but off the top of my head, that's 4. And that's this season, right? So yeah. In terms of the whole thing, again, I get it if it's Champions League, but I don't think Leicester being in the Champions League is as sure as what everyone's making it out to be. I really don't. And then if it's the case of Europa, mate, I don't think that's a pull. If you're a big player and you're in the Europa League or you don't have Europa, you're going to go for the bigger brand in the platform. The Europa League is not something that players dream to be in to compete with the best. You're not competing with the best. So that argument is kind of the same. For me, that's the reason I equate no Europe and Europa League as the same thing in terms of pull. It's not a level of competition you want to compete against.
Okay, I understand your point. Let's just hope the player we get, Bissouma, and the player we're going to move on to now is your second and preferred target. Your second target that you said is a must for an Arteta's dream player. I've told you many times, Arteta loves this player very much. You said he's key to what we need to move forward now that we've been dealt a blow in not getting Samare, and that's Houssem Aouar. And I wanted to get your opinions on why he's so key, because there's been talks about France that he hasn't performed his best. Although there's been many factors due to this. This is because Aouar is a very much a attitude player. Sometimes he needs the right click in his brain, like mentality shift in his brain to unlock his full potential. And there's been concerns that from people like Edu saying, does he have the mentality to play for Arsenal? And but people like you would argue otherwise, because I told you in the chat.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Edu
I would
wanted
point.
Arteta wanted Aouar. I've told you many times. It's no secret. I'll be happy to tell. Arteta, Edu preferred Szoboszlai. That's why they went for Szoboszlai. Arteta preferred Aouar. And tell me why you and Arteta think Aouar's better, and we should get him.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll quickly address the concerns about him not being up for it. You look through his entire Champions League campaign, the biggest stage of the season, the biggest pressure of the season, does he perform? Every time. Every single game, he's made a goal or assist impact, or he has gone in and changed the game to win a penalty or to go and impact the game. And that's in every single Champions League game of the season, Aouar has stepped up. So when I look at a player and I look at mentality, look, I agree, you can have a poor trainer, but I don't know if people remember, do you know that Patrick Vieira was a horrible trainer? Horrific trainer. Trained terribly. Never trained properly. But when it was time for the game, he always made the difference. And I equate this mentality with Houssem Aouar. When you have him on the biggest stage and you ask him to run and, to attack, is he brave enough in tight spaces? He's insane. I think if I'm trying to project, why Arteta loves him, this is why I think Arteta is going to go with wingers that are mainly number 10s that like to come inside. Because Houssem Aouar can shift into a 4-3-3 or into a 4-2-3-1 very easily. So he can be the creative left winger in a 4-2-3-1 or a left 8 in a 4-3-3. This happens very easily, and the key thing is Houssem Aouar, he is impeccable in tight spaces on the wing. So if you do analyze him and you do watch him, what you'll notice is he loves being on the wing and receiving, and he's very comfortable going out of pressure. He then is able to come inside into the middle third and interact as a complete playmaker. He can do through balls or through his driving of the ball, drive into the box. Now, this is key when you start talking about how we build up. So how do we build up? We have our wingers start wide, and then they come inside. Bukayo always goes wide when the ball is on his side, receives, comes back in, and he attacks central, right? The same idea is going to happen with Tierney. So when you have Tierney bombing on into the left, you need to have somebody that's comfortable to receive wide, because Tierney is going to be as part of a 3. So we build in a 3 always, right? The ball side fullback will come in. He'll receive the ball. We'll then pass it into midfield, okay? And that's Aouar. He's going to be on the touch line. As we progress, he'll bring it back into midfield. Tierney will overlap, and we need to have somebody comfortable on the wing and in the center. That's the key, mate. That is why Arteta loves him. Szoboszlai, he is not comfortable on the wing. He is comfortable in the center. And he's comfortable driving with the ball. And so why Arteta loves him so much is he's not two-way, right? So Aouar can block passing lanes. If you guys want to actually have a look at Juventus home last season. That was Aouar, a defensive masterclass, not attacking, defensive. And you look in, he's blocking passing lanes, he's in his spot, in his structure, and that's why Arteta's going to love him. So when you compare Szoboszlai,
he can break through the lines with his passing range.
And dribbling, mate. It doesn't matter. To him, he's happy doing both.
Complete. He's so complete. I just realized.
Complete playmaker. And you know what? I think I've talked to you about this. If anyone's on Twitter and they've seen my suggestions, what do they all have in common? I'll tell you. They are freak athletes. Okay, they've got insane stamina. Soumaré, Aouar, he can run for days. He can be in a pivot if he wants to. It doesn't matter. He's happy doing it. They're freak athletes. They can carry the ball in every single third of the pitch. Are you worried if Aouar picks it up in our 6-yard box? No, I'm not.
No, it's a
Can
dream.
He carry it to the other end of the field, though? Not many players can do that. Yeah, hell yeah, he can. Can Soumaré do the same? Yep, he can. So they're ball progressors in every third of the pitch, and they also are freak athletes. Also, Aouar doesn't limit me to a specific formation. This is a big thing, so I'm sure we'll get into maybe shouts with Buendia.
Makes you more flexible.
Sorry?
Makes you more tactically flexible.
Exactly, mate. That's what it is. So it's not that we don't have to go 4-3-3. It's that we can choose to do it if we want. If the game is going like West Ham, and you don't have to bring on a sub to do it, right? You have multi-tool players that can fill different problems on the field. This is the way of the future. This is how we have to recruit. If you're recruiting a Bissouma, who, again, I hate to bring it back to this, but if you're recruiting a Bissouma, he is a 6. You cannot expect him to go into a 4-3-3, into a 4-2-3-1 as easily as a Soumaré. You cannot make that change because he's more of a sitter. You have to accommodate for that. You know, Partey, like Kante, does more running, right? So that's the reason those two in a pivot would work. Partey is just so elite as an athlete. He can cover that, right? But if you were to go into a 4-3-3 and you have a single pivot, we've seen it with Pep, okay? He doesn't prefer Rodri in the big games. Who does he prefer?
Fernandinho.
Why, even though he's 35, why? You know, if it was only about your on-the-ball ability, why have we not seen it as a successful tactic in the Champions League? That's what I like to pose to people. In Europe, why has the single pivot traditionally not worked?
Why is it?
Well, because it's too easy to counter. They can't cover the ground. We saw it with Partey at Villarreal. He had way too much responsibility on him to do that. In Europe, when there's under the lights and when you're in transition, okay, you absolutely need a secondary player to help build up. You end up lacking the ability and the spaces to do that. And so you do need more in there, typically. And if you wanted to change to a single pivot into a game state, that only works if you have a halfway line defending and you're attacking and you're camping into their box. However, if you're asking somebody to build up play from the beginning at the back of your field, deal with the mid block press, and contribute into the final third, it ends up being too many jobs. And I think what you end up doing is you lose your center compactness. That's another thing that we're going to go back to. So a worthy debate is maybe a single pivot versus a double pivot, and why is one better than the other? Okay? Mikel Arteta has one thing in mind, and that has been central compactness. We invert our fullbacks because he's afraid of getting a counter, right? We have Hector Bellerin as an inverted fullback because he doesn't trust him running. We have Chambers, who at times is better on the overlap, but we have him inverted many of the time because we are afraid of getting transitioned. The same thing happens in Europe. Okay, so when you do have these inverted fullbacks, like you have Cancelo and you have Rodri in there, there's not enough athleticism to be able to go wide. They lack the horizontal agility to go out wide, and they lack their controlled aggression to really ensure that they're winning those duels. So those are the big reasons why I think that why you really want to double pivot in Europe and why you don't want to be specific to one formation. If you do end up recruiting those profiles to like a single pivot or to one formation, you lose your tactical versatility and you lose the ability to be unpredictable.
That's okay. So would you be happy if we get Awa and Buendia to make up for Samari? I know they can't be the same role as he is, but I've been hearing something about Buendia. Let's just say he might be on the way to Arsenal. If that was to happen with Awa, what would you think? Would you be happy with that?
I love it, mate. That changes the calculus. So if I'm sitting there debating who do I need and you're only giving me one, then it's Awar every day of the week. There should be no question about it because he's more adaptable to different positions. Buendia though is going to be very similar to Odegaard, but he is going to be more intense. Okay? He loves the right half space. He lives in that right half space, but he is more intense. Okay? And he's better on the half turn than Odegaard, I think. He's shown it kind of in the Premier League as well. When Odegaard gets pressed from a counter press, he struggles, right? Villarreal, Liverpool, we've seen this. And so Buendia is better at that. But I don't think Buendia is going to be better than Emile Smith-Rowe eventually down the line. And that's why when I look at a central presence and what do I want, I prefer an Emile Smith-Rowe to run than I do a Buendia, who can run, but if you're asking him to run back to goal, he's not going to be able to do that. You know, let me put it this way: Emile Smith-Rowe can deal with Juan Foyth breaking through the lines. Would you agree with that?
Are you saying that's where Smith-Rowe would eventually play?
100%.
So
center,
like an 8.
No, I don't think he'll be like he can do it. But I think he's a number 10. He's a James Maddison. He's a sharpshooter. This is where I see him. He can easily become an 8 because we've seen it. He's fine being outside on the wings. You know, he can do it. He's played left wing for goodness sake, like Grealish, right? Like he can overlap and he can do that. But he's going to develop shot power. So what you saw versus Tottenham is not a one-time thing. In the academy, he was banging these in for days. There's one viral clip, if you remember, when he had that one whip. I forget who he was doing, but he received it in the left half space channel, and he created some kind of whip that went past really the whole team. It was crazy. The power to generate and the technique to do that, you don't want that on the wings. You don't want that deeper. You want it as close to goal where it's going to get you output. So I see him more of like a James Maddison type, and he's going to be a number 10, that can overload both sides. And if you want, he can drop into the right half space. But mate, Buendia is excellent. Like, don't get me wrong. I just think Emile Smith-Rowe has a higher ceiling, right? So if we get both of those, it's phenomenal.
You're saying he limits He limits what's his face? He limits Emma Smith
Emil.
Rowe's growth.
He does 100%, but we also need it in a squad, right? So I think like fundamentally, if you did make the decision, I think Emil will suffer from a Buendia purchase. But again, we do need another option in the middle there. You know, Emil can't be relied upon. You know, for a full season, and even if not, it's just great squad depth. So if you're looking at Awar and Buendia, that's phenomenal. You know what I mean, mate? Like, again, I
That's
think
what I
our
was trying to say.
creativity. Sorry, go ahead.
Like it provides strength options because you know Emerald do. He has crazy ability. He's prone to injuries, so
Well, any player, you want two options. You know what I mean? So I'm never going to say no to more. It's just if the idea is Awar or Buendia, then the discussion is a little bit different because Awar is a more complete playmaker, and he's better two-way for me. So Awar you can put into a pivot. I don't think you can put Buendia as an 8. I really don't. I've seen people say that he can be an 8, and I struggle with that view. I don't think he's two-way enough to be an 8. He can overlap and he can press, but really he's going to be kind of like he's going to help with Saka on the wing or as a central 10. He'll be a pressing trigger. But as an 8, you have far more requirements to be two-way, and I don't think he has that.
You were saying you were worried about in the chat. You were saying you're worried about the direction of where the club's going. I wanted to get your reasonings for that.
Yeah, mate. So the idea of choosing Samare or not choosing Samare, why I have such a problem, it's not even so much the player, but it tells me that they're worried about some adaptation issues, and their replacement is Basuma. Ideally, like that's the link, right? And so if you're worried about adaptation, but you're choosing Basuma, that means you're telling me that you're refusing what we've already seen in the Premier League and what he struggles with, and you're not having scouted the player. Because if you were to watch the player, they're totally different animals off the ball, right? And if you're looking at the Premier League and you're looking at transitions, that should be your priority. So I think what worries me is when you make that kind of decision to go away from that and you go to the experienced players, it's a short-term philosophy. I don't like that. I'm a project guy. I'm a long-term development man. And everything in my bone tells me that's a bad decision. And so when you're making that decision, I worry about the direction. You know, if we were to get Awar and, you know, Buendia and we start beefing up the midfield, then like, sure, you know, it reassures me a little bit, primarily the Awar one, because it tells me the profiles we understand that are missing, right? If we don't get that done, then I worry because our left-hand side right now is the one that is our only attacking threat, really, on average. So it worries me when I'm seeing recruitments in the right half space, if that makes sense. It doesn't make sense to me. We need to do the creativity in the left half space, and then you can deal with the right.
But don't you think we've had cause for concern for the reason why, you know, people such as Pepe, you know, people such as Saliba, you know, taking a lot longer than was predicted to adapt. You know, people say, why didn't we play Saliba? Why didn't we play Saliba? It's because he wasn't ready. And you can say, oh, when he went to France, he went to France, he played well, but that's because he's in an environment he's already comfortable in. He was not physically, mentally ready to be in the Premier League, in my opinion. Not yet, anyway.
Well, mate, you know, okay, look, Saliba is a little bit of a unique one because I go back, I wanted him to get a loan. I rep the guy, right? Like, I've watched him. He is an elite player. Let's not get it wrong. And he probably would have done better than all of our center backs. I don't doubt that view either. He would have. But he didn't play football for 6 months. And he had a huge tragedy. And you only arrive once. I think I've said this before. So if Saliba were to make mistakes, which he would, the perception of him would have been tainted. And so I think the smart idea was to give him a loan. The critique about having foreign players, what I think kills me, mate, is, I had a comment before and I go, what was our most successful team in history? The
For
Invincibles.
foreign players.
Okay, how many of those were homegrown, prem-proven players?
I think about one.
There you go. The traditionally, and then let's take away from Arsenal, because by the way, Arsenal as a club, if we're going over the history, we're
No,
known
no.
for foreign imports. We're known for that. But let's go over history. Who have been the most successful players? If I were to make foreigners or homegrown players and tally up the numbers, who are the EPL greats?
Foreign.
Right? You've got more foreign examples. And by the way, the Basuma that everyone keeps saying that he's had a year in the league, mate, he was from France. He was from Lille. Like, the irony in the statement is just too much for me. So, look, I think you can recruit from the league, okay? But fundamentally, I think that you have to recruit player profiles first. That should be your first step, okay? And then if those player profiles are within your league and they fit, then why not? It's not that prem proven are bad, and it's not that foreign players are bad. It's just, I think adaptation is more than just saying, oh, if you're in the league, you're going to adapt great. We've seen countless examples of players not being able to step up to a bigger club. No, I mean, the risk is there. But how do you mitigate that risk? Okay, what's my system and who's going to be the best person for that system? That's my fundamental belief, right? I don't think that Rob Holding should have started Villarreal because I wanted Callum Chambers. Does he have experience at center back? Not terribly, but is he more closer to David Luiz in profile? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So for the plan of building up in build up, would he have been better? Absolutely. Right? It's the same logic for why I would want a Sumare or something. It's not that Basuma is not a good player, and it's not that he wouldn't adapt. But would he adapt to this team, to how we play? Would he be able to adapt? I think he would. I'm not saying Basuma's bad, and he wouldn't. But what's more important is asking, how does he fit in the system? I think is what I'd like to say. But
Okay. I see your point. Let's move on to the news of Leno. There's a lot of murmuring going on about Leno leaving. Especially from what I was told, Borussia Dortmund are leading the race. Let's just say he's more leaving than staying. Borussia Dortmund are leading the race. You've made it clear that you're not overly a biggest fan of Leno, and you'd be more than happy to let him go for the right price. Just give me a few reasons why that is, and give me your replacements for him.
Yeah. So Leno, I was an Emi Martinez fan from a while ago. And when the decision came up about who we should go, I was very clear that Emi was the keeper that we should have kept. And it comes down to his authority on set pieces and his authority claiming the box, which I don't think Leno is. He's an excellent shot stopper, but his distribution is horrific. It's actually impeded us this season, and we've seen him go long because of it. So in terms of the player that we're receiving, in Emi, I think there's a misconception with Emi that he was this massively better distributor. But I look at three things for distribution. It's about quick decision making, and even short passing, about getting the ball to your players quickly and making those right decisions. Matt Ryan has shown that he's better than Leno at doing it, and it's not because he's got this insane ability with the ball at his feet. You need to look at a couple things: passing range, gait, which is just receiving the ball. How does he look receiving the ball? Is he comfortable? And then is he quick enough to pass it on to the free player? Those are your three things that you look for in a distribution. Leno fails in all three. He's really poor at all of them. He can't claim in a box, and he's a great shot stopper, but he's always going to be a 7 out of 10. This is how I always say. And you know what? I use Leno and Granit Xhaka as my problems with the squad. It's not that they're horrific players. It's not that they're crap. They're good, but I want great. And so I've always felt that he is a player we can move on from. In terms of the targets, so this is where it gets a little sticky, because I think goalkeepers, there isn't a clear goalkeeper out there on the market that fills everything that we really want. It's a really quite dry market, but I would rather us just lean into this build up philosophy. So if we're going to build up and we need our keeper to build up, let's recruit the best players that can build up on the market. So I'll give you some two names. So I guess Andre Onana was something that has been floating around on Twitter. I guess from Charles Watts as well, and he would work great with that philosophy. He's ambidextrous, so he's amazing with the ball at both at his feet. He'd be excellent. He does have a ban that could be appealed in June, right? I think we're going to hear about that ban really quite soon. But for $7 million, he's a phenomenal price. If that's the quoted price, that's amazing. And because another player that I just
contract.
Yeah, he is.
I think Arsenal are hoping that the ban is overturned so that they can get him training by October, so be fit enough for the game. The only worry I have is AFCON as well.
And so I was just going to say, yeah.
But I don't think he would play AFCON. The ban will be still in effect when he has AFCON, surely, no?
If it was in effect, right? But if it got overturned, he would play, right? So he'd miss up to October, and then he'd miss the AFCON. So then that's almost half a season. If he's your first choice, right? And if you're going for top 4, I don't think it's great to have your starting goalkeeper missing 15 games of the season, which he would. He would miss 9 in October. He would miss at least 5 in January, right? So it's difficult. Another player that I've liked, but it's a project, right? And, is Meslier from Leeds. Yep, I agree with Jonathan. He's been my pick from, November when I did my thread. He is very young, much a project player, though.
He's very young.
Very young, and he's going to make mistakes, but he is the exact profile that you want, and you can build him up to be. A third player that I have also mentioned, though, is David Raya from Brentford. And so he is very short, but he is probably the best goalkeeper on the market with the ball at his feet. So if you're recruiting to that profile, he is phenomenal. He'll do that with you.
But as you said, when you look for terms of a goalkeeper, it's not just one department he has to be good at.
Exactly.
When he command his box, Brentford, from watching him this season, my personal opinion, I felt some of the goals Ray could have commanded his box a bit better. He's been a bit too. He's not weak, but it's been a bit too easy. He can't command his box as much as I would like him to. He's a great shot. He's good at shot stopping. Very good, technically brilliant at distribution on his feet. It's just more of the commandment on his box, which I think Matt Ryan can do. He command his box, he can distribute, and so can Onana. Onana can do those things. That's why, and so does Meslier. That's why I think Raya to me is more further down in the pecking order. But I can see why you like him.
He's in the list because he can build up essentially, and so. He's in that profile, but you know what, mate? I think we've chatted in the chat about this. I'm buying a stopgap keeper for replacing Leno right now because I want my main replacement in summer 2022. So I'll buy somebody right now that has a progression to tie us over, and I'll do that by recruiting to the build-up philosophy. So I think when you really consider it, Onana and Matt Ryan for probably £10 million is business that you can't turn down. I can't imagine Matt Ryan is much more than 2 or 3 million. He's in the last year of his contract, right? So I can't imagine he's a very expensive option. And then when you have Onana for a quoted 7 million, it makes great business sense. And you have 2 keepers now that can build up, but I still think there's going to be faults with both. But at the end of the day, I'm recruiting a much bigger target in summer 2022 for doing that. And I want him to be the main pillar. And then you end up having a really great progression because we have Arthur Okonkwo, who I think is our project. So when we talk about Meslier, I don't know why we can't look at our homegrown options. Arthur Okonkwo is 20 as well, and he is 6'3", amazing distribution. He's going to be a star. Dortmund were looking at him from when he was 17. We faced an issue trying to sign him, actually, if people remember, in terms of his professional terms. Dortmund were very close to having him. He's an excellent keeper, and he's going to be a star. So I have him in our project very much. I guess Unai Simon. I haven't watched terribly much of him, but he's under the same profile. He's strong, commands his box, and he's great with build-up. I think he has a release clause too, if I'm not mistaken. That's roughly in the 45 million. You may not have to quote me on that, but he does have a release clause, I believe. The only issue that I have with that is that enough? Do I go big and I buy an Unai Simon if I'm letting go Leno? I don't think so, because I have too much to do elsewhere on the pitch. So I basically look at Unai Simon and can I achieve a similar level of build-up competency and strength in aerial ability with Onana for a third of the price or a quarter of the price? Then yeah, I think that's probably the smarter idea to do. But it is a little bit dependent on his ban, right? And whether or not the appeal is successful. So otherwise, I would probably go homegrown with it, because, again, I'm recruiting my big keeper in summer 2022.
And who is that?
I would like Jan Oblak. That for me, a keeper is massive to how comfortable you're feeling in defense and how you're able to command respect in the tunnel. And Jan Oblak is the best keeper in the world, and I don't want us to sugarcoat this position. I think if you're looking at a huge purchase and he's the last piece of your puzzle, it makes business sense for me to do it. But if the team is lacking in other areas, then of course you have to compromise and you have to end up doing a cheaper solution. But I'm using this summer to fix my starting lineup, and then the following summer I'm looking at upgrades, and he would be the first upgrade position. And when you start looking at the age profile of everybody, you would then have Onana, who is 25, I believe, and then you have Oblak, who's 26, and you have Arthur Okonkwo, who's 20. So
Oblak is 28, mate.
28? Okay, even better.
28.
So I've got a lot more progression in Oblak, who's ready and my number one keeper, and Onana, who is 25. That's a great age to be as a keeper. You can sell him later on if you want, but you have Arthur Okonkwo, who's 6 years younger. He can learn that position with Oblak by the time he's done, and I've got my succession plan done. So that's how I look at it. I'm very keen to do the big purchase in summer 2022 with Champions League football, and like I would make him my first purchase if we did the business that I think we can do this summer. So we've clearly chosen Basuma. It's not my favorite pick, but he solves the anchor problem. If we got Houssam Aouar, he solves our creative presence problem. If we got Buendia, excellent. That's squad depth in the attacking midfield. And we just need right back, which I think is the only position we haven't talked with. I'm sure that's the number one priority to do. We're definitely going to get a right back. So just to tie up maybe this section, I see goalkeeper as the only weakness then if we address all of those positions properly.
So speaking about right backs, the Arsenal preferred right back. We've all told you in the chat. You're actually not too happy about it, which I was surprised. To be fair, with me, I'm actually not totally happy with it either. But I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's a quality. He wouldn't be my first choice anyway, because it's obvious we're not getting Hakimi. It's very, very unlikely. Not only that Inter Milan have won the title, the fact that we can no longer offer Hakimi any European football, it's highly unlikely again, which is a shame. But for that right back position, I think I'm not totally mad about it as I was with Soumare, because there's other players that can replace Hakimi's quality, in my opinion. Soumare is a bit more unique. He's like a diamond, in my opinion. But anyway, we move on. That player for right back position, from what I was told, is Max Aarons. You're not a fan of that. I wanted to get your reasons to it.
Yeah, I'm not a fan because I think Max struggles with blindside awareness and he struggles 1v1 in isolation. So defensively, I'm not convinced on Max Aaron's, and I think technically he's got excellent things going for him. But as I think the recent chat has said, my pick has always been Rydel Baku from Wolfsburg. It's been for a couple months now, I've been shouting his name, and the reason is because he's far more complete in duels. He's far more complete blindside awareness, and he can compete 1v1 in isolation. He will never get done. He's got the same technical ability, if not better, than Max Aarons because he was actually a midfielder before. So just a little bit of background for people that may not know. Rydel Baku actually originally started as a midfielder with Mainz, and then when he was bought by Wolfsburg, he was converted into a right back. And so technically, he's ambidextrous. You can't really tell what foot he is. He's phenomenal with the ball at his feet, but his awareness in tight spaces going in or out, it's phenomenal. And he's actually got 10 goal and assist contributions this season. So in terms of output, he's up there with your Hakimi output, but he gives you the defensive competency that you want. Max, while I think he will offer you the attacking, although I don't think he's got quite the 10 goals and assists, by the way, I will say I think Rydel Baku is actually better offensively. He's just a better player, in my opinion. But Max will give you offensive competency, but he won't be great defensively. If you're looking at Lamptey is probably, I guess Jonathan is mentioning too, he is a far more suitable profile to Hakimi in terms of how he's played. But again, I worry about his injury concerns. He's had quite a few muscular injuries that for a fullback that relies explosively on his pace, I do worry about. But with Lamptey, my biggest concern is I don't think he's great in tight spaces. So he really requires space to thrive in. When you close the box and you end up having a low or a mid block, he does struggle. So I think that between the two, how I would rank them is Baku is my clear and away choice for Plan B. After that, I would probably choose Max over Lamptey because I think Max is better in tight spaces. I think they both lack defensively, and they're both quite short. But so is Rydel, so I don't think that's really a big criticism. But while they both lack defensively, I think Max is better in tight spaces. So I think he gets the edge in his offensive potential for me.
I've talked about one player for me, I'll put in the chat right now, that for me should be ahead of Lamptey and Aarons. They're brilliant for Leo. I think he offers you more defensive assurance, which Arteta does like, and he can go forward if needed to. That's my preferred choice. Celik from Leo, by the way. I think he's on the list. Arsenal have scouted him, and he's probably behind Baku in the list of right backs. That my preferred one would be Celik, Baku, Aarons, and then Lamptey. In my opinion, anyway, for Plan B.
But I think we're on the same page, right, mate? Where it's like we want a complete profile. The reasons why Max and Lamptey we struggle with is because we're worried about the defensive output that they could do in their duels, right? I think what I like is that, like you said, with Hakimi, the reason I wasn't as upset with it is because I do think, especially in Baku, the gap in the next Plan B is not massive. I rate Baku that highly. I think Rydel is excellent. And like you said, Zelik, I actually like him quite a bit. I would rate him above Max Aarons and Lamptey as well, in terms of what I want in the profile. But again, it comes down to having a complete player. And I think with us, what we're going to need somebody that's great in and out. The one thing I really like about Baku, though, it's probably better than everybody else, is Baku is comfortable on the touchline and he's comfortable in the box. It doesn't matter to him. And it's because he was a midfielder from his days previously. So I think while Max Aarons, I don't find him great, in tight spaces centrally as well. I think he struggles. So same with Lamptey. And Zelik, to a certain degree, I think he also struggles in tight spaces. If you asked him to interchange with, Bukayo, which we do at times, right? I don't know if he has the ability to do that in the Prem. So that's why Baku I see is probably the best bet, but we'll see.
We'll see. You've been hearing the news about the Arsenal takeover. You know, him going ahead with the bid. Turns out he was waiting for the Villarreal game to finish, so the Arsenal players were not distracted by any news. He will push on with his bid, which I will get rejected from what I've heard. And there's talk of one more person that might be interested, but investing in Arsenal, which I've said by the way, but I won't talk about it here. But I wanted to hear your opinions on the Daniel Ek takeover, and now you understanding the fact that the roles of the Invincibles are not actually a football one. They're more of like an ambassador of the club, you know what I mean? I want, like, if you're still have those concerns about the Daniel Ek takeover or not.
So I've become a lot more soft on the stance with it because my biggest issue is having fans, or rather, fans and even, kind of ambassadors in the football capacity. If they're going to be just ambassadors, I think my fears are quelled a little bit more. It's a lot more objective than what I thought. And I think with that, it's going to be a long, drawn-out process. I still probably would prefer a motivated Josh, ultimately, because I see the ability to turn around a franchise. That's always been my key sticking point with all of this, where I think with Josh, what you're going to find is you have experience in multiple franchises of turning things around. And I think that's a very key thing that you're not going to have with many of these owners who have more financial capacity, maybe. But that doesn't mean success. And, we are probably the kings of wasting money. And so I don't think finances are the issue. But I do like the X situation if they're not going to be on the board in a football capacity.
A few things I wanted to tell you about Egg. Ek is I was just Ek is he's like Roman Abramovich. He's got that type of personality of Roman Abramovich from people speaking to him. And I say that, and I'll give you an example. I was watching his interview with James from AFTV, and he told a perfect story, and encapsulated why he's described as a Roman Abramovich. He was talking to one of his business investors, and they were asking him questions. And one of the questions Daniel X said is, if I give you $1 billion, what would you do with it? And because the question was so unexpected, they didn't know how to answer it, and they thought they'd lost the investment. But Daniel Ek invested, and not only did he invested 10 times the amount of money that they were asking for. And he said, don't worry, but that's the type of way I want you to be playing at. So he's the type of owner that likes to spend, you know what I mean? Which I'm just wondering, does that change your stance on him, or I've told you that?
Yeah, it's tough. You know what? I've heard, I guess, the rumors that we've also he's not going to put us into debt. That's been the big thing that I think needs to be said. It really depends how he buys us. If we go the Roman Abramovich way, I actually don't like that because he is in debt. I think that's a big point of contention, to be honest with you. So when Chelsea, and same with Man United, and when they do need to sell, the impact on them is going to be massively. And, if he ever was to leave, they would crumble in terms of their foundation. I like the fact that we're separate from our owners, and we do have an asset that isn't tied to them, really, no matter what we say about them. And so if Ek were to be able to secure the funds without us being in debt, and that would be the case moving forward, then he becomes more of a case of really the perfect owner. Why wouldn't you want Ek, right? Because now you remove the threat of a financial debt. You remove the threat of having fans really on the board, which I think is not a great idea. I like the objectivity, but now you have a person who invests. So of course, I think in that way, you have the perfect storm. if all those things were to be true. But again, I really think Josh is going to use Arsenal as his coming out party. And I know everybody is really emotional with this, but in a business sense, Josh is very young as a CEO, and the global brand of Arsenal is massive. So I expect them to continue to reject as long as Josh has kind of heart to do so, really. That's where I see it. So I think this takeover, if it does happen, it's not happening in the next 6 months. It's happening in 1-2 years down the line. And in that time, I think we're going to see Josh invest quite a bit and give the opportunity. I think Stan's going to give him the opportunity to prove his worth, because Arsenal's a massive brand, mate. Like when you look at the ability to turn around Arsenal, and if he were to do it, okay, what it does for him in the corporation, in the corporate world, is massive. It's much bigger than the Avalanche. It's much bigger than the Nuggets. It gives him credibility that he's a competent CEO, if you know what I mean. Like the global brand difference is massive. So I really do think that we're going to see this drag on. I don't know if it'll be quick. If it is, I'll probably be wrong, and I'm happy to eat my words if they are. But I really see KSE rejecting everything unless you start a massive bid at $3 billion. That's been my lowest number that I think we'll sell for.
Well, 3 billion. Jeez. I'm sorry.
I think the 1.8 is going to be swiftly rejected, if it hasn't already, I think, as you've heard. And in terms of us, I've always felt like, we are worth minimum 3 billion. He's not going to sell for about 2.5 billion because he's already rejected 2 since the start. And the global potential of Arsenal is massive. It's bigger than Liverpool and Man United, by the way, because of our finances. We don't have debt. And we have similar global appeals. I would say Man United and Liverpool probably have slightly higher fan bases globally, but we're up there, mate. Like, it's Man United, Liverpool, and Arsenal who have the biggest global fan bases and financially carry the biggest wealth. Now, it's not in their owners, but it's the potential, I think, is what I'm getting at as an asset. But between those three, Arsenal's the only one that doesn't have debt. So when you're buying it as an asset, that carries weight. Another thing that I also want to bring up, too, is it's actually really bad to sell when Arsenal is bad. And what I mean by that is you don't like to sell an asset when it's losing you money, do you? You normally sell an asset when it's making you money. So I actually think the Kronos and the KSE will invest because it's better for their asset. Why in their negotiations would they not invest if they can demand more? Why would they ever sell their club at a cheap price? It doesn't make sense. Arsenal are the worst that they've ever been as an asset and globally. Why would you sell if you don't believe that it can get bigger? Because it's Arsenal, so it'll always be big. So from them, they're looking at it as a business. And why would I sell now?
You would also look at it like they could be saying, "Oh, we're losing money here. It's the lowest you've ever been. Why don't we just sell it and just go and buy another one?" That's ultimately what fans want them to think anyway.
And who can they buy? I'm really glad you brought that up. With the same global appeal, who can they buy for the same price? In the space, who can you buy? Because you have to remember, like, football is a global brand, mate. Like, these other stuff that they have, even though it's the Rams and whatever, it's only the American market. You have to look at it in their portfolio. What else and what other franchise in the world can they buy for the same price that they would swap? There is none. Unless I'm wrong, unless they're going to go for Liverpool or Man United, right? I don't think there's another sport that's as global as football. I think we all can agree on that. So in your portfolio, what are you going to replace it with?
True.
So, yeah. So, look, I think maybe to wrap this up, look, I've always been a defendant of Josh. It's been well known. I've received a lot of heat for it on here. And not just like, in the podcast, but even like on Twitter, I've received a lot of heat for it. But I fundamentally think that Josh is here to stay. The comments that I read at the fan forum are not of somebody who wants to sell. And I really, truly think that in order to get the fans on side, he's going to invest. And not only that, but it's not even about the fans. He's going to invest because his asset is depreciating. He's a businessman. Whatever you want to say about the Roanoke, they are phenomenal businessmen. They've proven that, right? So as a businessman, what do I do when my asset is depreciating? I invest, or I cut my losses and I get something to replace it. But then I go back to that argument, what are they going to replace Arsenal with in their portfolio? So that's why I think replacing us and selling to cut your losses is not in their minds right now. Now, if Ek is here 2 years down the line when Arsenal are back up, I think I'm going to change my tune. I can see them selling because now that they've turned around the asset, they can demand not 2 billion, but 4 billion. Arsenal back in the Champions League, right? It just makes business sense to wait. Why would I sell at this point? And I don't mean to be like argumentative, but I don't think people have actually thought about this on Twitter. Like, why would I, as a businessman, sell? Forget what I want and who I like as an owner, but why would I sell? Doesn't make sense to me. So I actually think they'll reject things unless a huge bid, like I said, of like 3 billion minimum comes in. I've always said it'll take anywhere from 3 to 5 billion to sell Arsenal. But I don't know what your thoughts are.
I just know for a fact they're not selling. So for me, as long as they invest, how can I just make sure you take more care of the club, I guess, and don't let your asset depreciate like it is now. I just wish they wanted this quicker and sooner, in my opinion.
Oh, mate, look. The one thing I brought up was I didn't like the financial instability, right? And I'm not a fan if it's not going to be quick, but ultimately these things will take 6 months to complete, right? Even if I told you, okay, Daniel Ek got a bid accepted, right? The actual takeover would take 6 months to complete, just through litigation. So it struggles for me to do this in the middle of our transfer window. I've always feared that. So I actually predict that this will be a really long, drawn-out process. And if we do sell, it happens much later in the season or later in the future, even if we do.
Fair enough. I was going to end something, but I've just seen news on Twitter. What is your opinion on Stuttgart and Arsenal in talks for Mavropanos with a loan with a buyback option? I've just seen something like that. Just totally random. I've just seen that.
Well, I've been in the past, like, you know me, mate. Like, I love profiles, so I actually would have kept Mavropanos over Rob Holding or Callum Chambers, and I would have extended Luiz, and I think that'll happen. And the reason is because I prefer profiles over names right now. And I think a big reason that I like Mavropanos is the same reason I like a Saliba. They're athletic monsters. Saliba's in a different realm on the ball, but Mavropanos is an athletic monster who is going to compete. And I don't think that Callum Chambers and Rob Holding are going to be able to compete in the Premier League. I've lost my patience with them. And it's because they're poor in defending isolation. And how we want to defend, by the way, we're going to become a halfway line team, right? I don't want Rob defending Heung-min Son anymore. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see Callum Chambers defending Heung-min Son or Richarlison. I don't want to see that anymore. And Mavropanos has far more athletic ability, so I would actually prefer to keep him. Loan with an option to buy means he's still under our condition, but we can set the price. So I think from a business perspective, it's best for Arsenal, right? And he's actually been great at Stuttgart. He's had a great season. And he's actually done the role that we're talking about with Saliba and everybody to perfection. He is actually the right-sided center back at Stuttgart. And Wamagatuka, who I love, by the way, but he's been injured, he was their right wing back. So he covers that space, mate. Like, he does the role that we're going to ask them to do. It just kills me when we have a replacement that's excelled, by the way, in the Bundesliga. If you look at his numbers, I know everybody likes to look at names, but if you look at his numbers, he's excelled. He's been one of the best
he's
defenders
brilliant.
in the league, right?
It's just injury concerns with me.
But I'm not recruiting him to start, right? I'm recruiting him as a backup, and I'm looking at.
But would he want to be a backup, knowing fully well we can play like that with Stuttgart? That's the problem.
Sorry, say it again.
Would he? Would he want to come back knowing that he'll just be on the bench?
Oh, I don't know.
That's the thing.
I don't know that. But if
we
I
have
were
Saliba, who has a way higher ceiling than he has.
And I think so. Mavro. So I don't know about that. I don't know if he would come back to do that. I would tell him that. That's what I would want. But again, if you're comparing Rob and Callum Chambers, I think Mavro's the better player. And he's the better profile for what we want to do. I think the loan with an option to buy, though, why I really like it, is that we can dictate the price. I do kind of prefer to sell him or not to, because I have a feeling he'll do well in the Bundesliga again, and his value will be higher than his buyout. I do actually feel that, ironically, because he's had a great season this season, and he's going to continue to have a great season next season. So it really depends on what price we include on the option to buy, right? I think business-wise, it limits you, if you know what I mean. So if you have a price there,
you could charge a higher price for his performance.
Yes.
And what about this player?
Manur Solomon. Yeah, so he's in the right profile. Okay, I don't like him.
I've heard Arteta really likes him.
And it makes sense to me.
They call him Eden Hazard.
He might be like Hazard in a sense, but again, he won't help us with multiple formations, right? So I think he's a plan B for a very obvious reason, because we want Houssam Aouar, and I don't think the two can coexist in the same space. That's probably the biggest thing. So Solomon, he's not very good on the outside. Like, he never goes in to out. He's not very good on the touchline. He always comes inside, like Hazard, right? Like, the comparison is very real. So when you have that and Houssam Aouar in your central zone, I think they're going to compete for spaces. Just like how we see Bukayo and Odegaard struggle to really have an impact, you're going to have, I think, a similar clash of personalities if you have both of them on the pitch at the same time.
Bukayo and who? So I didn't hear that.
Bukayo and Odegaard.
Oh yeah, they cover the same place, don't they?
They do, and they clash all the time. And you're going to have the same issue with Solomon and Aouar if you were to recruit them, right? Okay. So I think it's one or, and I think Solomon is your plan B in case Aouar doesn't happen.
We're gonna do another episode during the week. I want to do this another episode talking about the Halem boys next week. Stay tuned. I want to have George here because I know he's brilliant with it. His analytic point of view and the way he can spot potential and maximize and see the ceiling of the potential despite their age is brilliant. I'm definitely going to do another episode during the week. I don't think it's going to be live. I think it's going to be a pre-recorded episode. So stay tuned for that. I wanted to get this because I've been having this for a long time. What is Bukayo's full ceiling? What do you think his full potential is? What do you think he will eventually be?
I struggle with that quite a bit.
Exactly.
Because I'll be honest with you, when you're looking at his qualities, they don't scream the impact that he's had and how quick he's had. And the only reason I want to highlight this is I think he's one of the most intelligent footballers I've ever seen, really, period. Because athletically, he doesn't have the same traits that you would predict an explosion from, really. He never gets injured, which is phenomenal. And don't get me wrong, his physicality is insane. But what has allowed him to get in every third of the pitch is his footballing intelligence. He's perfectly happy being a left back, being a left center mid, right wing. Mate, that doesn't happen often. So
he could even play right back.
He could play anything. He could even play goalkeeper and have an impact on the progression. I'm being honest. The lad is he's crazy. And the only reason I want to highlight intelligence is because I think it's a huge Twitter trope. And I really want to do this because, and I don't want to get into a political view, but I don't think his background gets the due praise that he is. He's extremely intelligent. I see nobody talking to me about how intelligent Bukayo Saka is and why it's a surprise that he's done this. Academically, he's got A stars. He's a phenomenal academic. It makes sense to me. The guy just does football properly in every sense of the word. He takes care of himself. He's a great trainer. I think if I don't want to sit on the fence because I keep going off and off, but I think he could easily be top 3 in his position in the world, for sure.
In what position though? Where?
Right wing. 100%.
You think that's where you end up, right wing?
100%. Yeah, he. I really thought he was going to be a Clarence Seedorf type, like a left center mid 8 when he first brought onto the scene. But his technique and his shooting technique, it's crazy. You put that in the final third. You have to have that in the final third. And he's so intelligent. Sorry?
His shooting at times have been.
Mate,
is that sign of tiredness and overplayed?
I think it's tiredness and overplayed. And I've used this argument in the past. Why don't you look since January when he actually was moved to right wing and look at his minutes? He is just shy of a goal or assist contribution every single game, if you know that.
Mm.
And the 1 or 2 games where he does not have a goal or assist contribution was when he was coming back from injury right after the break, the international break. So it's while people hammer him for his composure, I really don't understand it because if you look, even the last couple games, the first game at Villarreal, he had a shot that just hit the post. If you go, and he was just past the 18-yard box, and the way he whipped it and he generated the power, mate, technique wise, he's gonna explode as a goal scorer, 100%. Sure, he has things to work on. Sure, it's not great, but in 2-3 years, the lad's 19 or 20. Did he turn 20? I forget.
Let me check. Hold on.
Because
he's 20. He's 19. He's
19. Mate, he's 19. Mate, we haven't even seen a quarter of what he can do. We haven't. The lad is 19 and he's doing this in Arsenal. I don't think people realize. And so, yeah, I call him world class right now. I do. I'll shout it with my chest. He's world class. He impacts the game every time. He's our technical leader. He does it in every single third of the pitch. I haven't seen a player that has been able to do his record in different positions in the world. Phil Foden has a phenomenal record, but can I put him at left back? I don't know. I've seen it with Bukayo, and he's scored. He's made an impact at left back. I don't think people realize how tough that is to impact in defense, in midfield.
He made an impact on right back. He's right back. He was the one that put in the cross at right back that won us the game against Benfica. Saka. He can play anywhere.
Mate, he's world class. I don't know why people are so afraid just because we're shit and we're horrible in the league position. Why you can't be objective? Bukayo Saka is world class. Make no mistake about it. But yeah, his ceiling, I think he's a right winger. And actually, by the way, if you noticed Arteta before the Villarreal game, he was asked about Bukayo and being played, and he goes, "Bukayo is in the front line as always. He's gonna be a right winger, 100%."
As I said, I'm definitely going to do another episode talking about the core the core Paylen boys / youth players we have, players like Martinelli, and talk about their potential and their ceiling and weaknesses they need to improve on. Stay tuned. One player I wanted you to tell me their final ceiling is. The reason why I want to ask this and end off on this is because so many Arsenal fans are saying why he's not playing, and that's Martinelli. I feel he's been taught to play a winger, because Martinelli is a player that comes inside a lot. I think Arteta's trying to teach him how to not just be a one, make him more dynamic, which he already is, don't get me wrong, but just add elements to his game that makes him better overall. That's why I feel like we have to have patience with Martinelli. Do you have the same opinion as mine, and where do you think he'll get to in the future?
I don't think he's a left winger, if I'm being really honest with you. I've always said he's a striker in the Luis Suarez mold. That's where I see him being the most devastating. Um, I do think that Arteta's teaching him, though, how to play different positions, because I don't think that we're going to always have him as the center striker. He will operate at the left wing like a Heung-min Son in some game states. I don't think it's a set position. I just see him maximizing his potential as a striker, personally. And the big thing is his aerial ability and his ability to press. So I would rather his harrying and his press happen on clumsy center backs than I would on fullbacks. I also don't think that he has necessarily the technical ability in tight spaces to progress as a winger, which you do kind of need. He is very much a movement-based player, and actually he finds movement when there is none. So I actually really want that as close to goal as possible for the most impact, personally. But on Arteta teaching him, so there's actually a very specific trait that he's teaching him, and we can definitely get into it a little bit later. But it's called, La Pausa, if you've ever seen it on Twitter. But it's this idea of varying your intensity. So being able to know when to hold your run and then when to make the run for the best effect. He is teaching him that. And because Martinelli, you have to hold this kind of player back. He just wants to go, 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 go all the time. But that doesn't help in terms of exploiting a back line. So if you noticed, actually, he's really shown it in the last couple games. Even with Villarreal, you can see that he's holding his run and he's not constantly pressing. And that's exactly what Arteta means when he's not vacating his position. He was really upset. I think it was Man United when he pulled him off at halftime, right? And the reason was because he was leaving his structure. And so when you do that, it's great that he's chasing the ball, but it ends up not becoming an outlet on the side. So he was ruining the balance in the team in that sense. But where do I think he'd be?
That defensive. And you could tell he was angry, especially when that one moment where he had to sprint all the way back because he pressed so high. He left who was the player in behind to just 1v1 against I can't remember the defender. It was Gabriel, and he had to run back and clear it off for a corner. Yeah. That's what the type of things Arteta's talking about. He's not pressing intensively, stupidly, knowing the right time to change a game, makes him more effective.
Yeah, mate. And look, again, I think his superpower, if I were to look at Martinelli as a superpower, is he finds space when there is no space. So when I'm trying to project what is Arsenal as a team, we're going to face a lot more like low blocks when we are far better, right? When we do dominate the ball and we are a possession-based side, he's going to be a low block person. I don't want him on the wing contributing to crosses, even though he can do it, right? I would prefer him to be in the center, in the middle of the box, on the end of those crosses, as opposed to the one doing those crosses, especially with Kieran Tierney. So you have to consider those two things. It's not that he would be crap doing the position, though. Like, he can fully operate. If Balogun is starting, he is a perfect left wing for Balogun, right? But if you're not operating with a false nine, he's your tip of an arrow, for sure.
Yeah. And thank you, George. Thank you guys for watching. We're going to end it off here. There's so many players I still want to ask about. We still have Willock. We still have Balogun, who's announced a new contract. There's such exciting Cornhill Lane. That's why I said I have to get George again for the week. Before we left, I wanted to say something. You may have seen George is going to be in way more videos now. Sometimes Simon. But George, let's just say he's like what would you describe yourself? Like part of the All Things Arsenal member squad or something? Describe yourself.
For sure. I'd love that. Yeah, no, I'm definitely somebody that would love to be on here as much as possible. And I love hosting with Daniel here. So.
Yeah, so as I said, George will be on here a lot more often. George, you need to put on your bio now. The people that join podcast, part of the All Things Arsenal podcast on your bio now.
For sure.
Yeah, he will be basically my co-host, and me and George will be working together, creating video ideas to bring to you guys. I want to expand my channel, not just doing podcasts. As I said, later down the week, we've got Helen videos. I'll be talking to George a lot more, collaborating, coming up with new ideas, how to expand the channel. And just want to congratulate George for coming on and accepting and being a part of this squad.
Yeah, cheers, mate. I'm really excited about this, and yeah, we'd love suggestions. So put it up on the comments if there's something that you want changed or you want us to talk about. We're pretty much open to anything. So I love talking football, and this is awesome. Thanks.
All right, so that's how I'm gonna end the video. Thank you. Please like, subscribe, and peace, everyone.
Cheers, lads. See ya.